Welcome to our weekly 3-minute therapy podcast with me. I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein and my co-host Mick Berry, and we're experts in REBT, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, devised by Albert Ellis in the 1950s, which caused a sea change in the approach to psychotherapy from the old psychoanalytic models to the more current REBT and cognitive behavior therapy models. And what REBT says is that our it's never our situations that cause our emotions and behaviors, but rather it's our thinking about our situations. So if you're anxious, depressed, angry, or addicted, look to your thinking that's causing that. And that's a very powerful idea because then you can change your thinking and in turn change your emotions and behaviors. And the main type of thinking that causes self-defeating emotions and behaviors is thinking in terms of demands. Must, should, supposed tos, have tos. The three main demands are a demand on oneself. I must do well and get approval. And if I don't, I'm no good, which leads to anxiety, stress, guilt, and depression. A demand on others. You must treat me well. And if you don't, you're no good. And that causes anger, resentment, and hostility. And the third must is a demand on the conditions of one's life. My life must go well, fairly, without hassles. And if it's not, then that's awful, terrible, and horrible. And that leads to procrastination and addictions. And I'm a clinical psychologist. I practice REBT, and Mick Berry is an expert in rational emotive behavior therapy. And we are fortunate to have as our guest today to discuss REBT with pain and injury, Walter Block, who has a lot of experience with pain and injury. And Walter, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Walter Block, and I'm 83 years old. And every morning I wake up, I've got some new pain that I didn't realize that I had before. And it's really pathetic. I mean, sleep injuries. Who ever heard of sleep injuries? That's crazy. And my I've been a fan of REBT since, I don't know when, maybe in the 1970s when I first met Albert Ellis. And I'm not so much what shall I say, a cognitive REBTer, more an emotional one or an automatic one. I just sort of let things slide, and I don't give myself a pain in the neck. I have plenty of pains in the neck, physical ones, but I don't give myself emotional ones. Namely, I don't, or I was going to say I try not to, but it's not that I try not to. It's sort of automatic nowadays that I'm just sort of an REBT Nick, if I can create a new word, and it just sort of flows automatically. So I'm more likely to laugh at my physical debilities than I am to give myself a pain in the neck about them. And all I do is, if I have some pain, I go to a doctor and I get a second opinion and I do whatever they say, and life goes on. I'm sort of the opinion that none of us get out of this alive, and it'll one of these days be my turn. I'm 83, and I once looked up what my life expectancy is, and I think it's 6 or 7 years, something like that. And that's the reality, and I don't give myself a pain in the ass about it.
Right. Okay. And I think you're pointing out the problem separation technique, and that is you have practical problems, a whole lot of them in terms of your body falling apart, but then you don't create emotional problems about the practical problems by putting musts and shoulds on them. Mick?
Well, I wanted to say, hey, Walter, it's good to see you. It's been a while. I wanted to say, I do think there's a possible factor here, Walter. Now, I'm not you. You know what you're dealing with. But one thing, a mistake I've done, and I've seen people do with REBT, is thinking that acceptance means resignation. Because as you're mentioning this, I'm wondering what the pains are that you can do something about, what the pains are that you can't do something about. And often the only way to figure that out is to just experiment and see what happens. Because I know somebody who threw her back out sleeping, and she's all of 48 years old. So I have heard of people getting injured by sleeping, which is funny, but it does happen. And if you think about it, actually, there's probably a greater chance of getting injured by sleeping than walking because you have no control over yourself when you're sleeping. But I don't know. It's an interesting topic. So anyway, I just wanted to throw out the possibility that there are things that you might be able to do something about, and then the things you might not be able to do a damn thing about. I myself, I exercise a lot, and one of the advantages to exercising that I'm finding now is I've heard that if you're healthy, then your demise is quicker. And so there is that as it, I don't know, I think that's true, but that's what I've heard. So that there is that advantage to, yeah, where no one gets out of here alive. However, we know there are some exits that are smoother than others.
Well,
Yeah.
I empathize with you because I also do exercise. I used to run, but I've had two hips and two knees replaced, and the doctor said you better not run because when you run, I understand you put 5 times your body weight on the floor every time you land, whereas when you walk, it's only 150% of your body weight. So I now do competitive race walking. When I started it for a 5K or even a half marathon, I could do 13-minute miles, sometimes get down in the high 12s. And now I'm at 17. And I mentioned this to Michael, and he says, don't worry, pretty soon you'll be at 20. And I enjoyed the 17. So I'm enjoying my 17, except I can't race now. Let me go over my bodily injuries just for the record. The reason I can't race is my ankle is messed up. But let me start from the top. I have, what do they call it? Pre-cancer. And I take all sorts of stuff that I put on there. And then going down a little bit, my eyes are messed up. I can, on the Word, I used to use 12 type, and then I went to 14, 16. I'm now at 18. And, at 18, I'm fine. I can see. What's next? My voice is, I get hoarse easily. Hearing, I'm not doing that well on hearing. I think I might need a hearing aid or something like that. So moving down, what else? Oh, my heart. Yeah, that's a biggie. I've had a stent. I had a heart attack, and I have all sorts of pills for that. And but my pulse is pretty good. I have AFib. Sometimes, usually my pulse is around 55, which is good, but sometimes it goes up to 100. And I'm not talking at the end of the race when it'll go to 130 or something. And then I mentioned my hip and my knees and my ankle. I twisted my ankle on a race on a tree route, so I don't do any more races on paths. I stick to cement. But other than that, I think I'm okay. But the head, the eyes, the ears, the throat, the heart, the hips and the knees and the ankle, and that's it. Otherwise, I'm fine. Uh, uh, but as I say, I think what is it? You have to distinguish between what, as Mick quite rightly says, you have to distinguish between that which you can change and that which you can't. And what you can change, REBT is not a passive thing. It doesn't say, well, you should just sit there and suffer. It says if you can change something, go change it. And I'm the biggest friend of doctors. I spend half of my life in waiting rooms nowadays. On the other hand, if you can't change it, you might as well accept it. What else can you do? My time when I used to run, my time for the mile, I never broke 5. My best was 5:05. And by the way, I ran with Bernie Sanders. He and I were on the same track team. So I'm sort of a mediocre athlete in everything I've ever done, but I enjoy it and it keeps me going.
Yeah, Mick.
Well, I'm going to try to remember what I was going to say. Um, yeah. When I was 25 years younger than I am now, I had a horrible sciatic problem. Awful. And this is a problem that a lot of people have. Well, fortunately, Michael Edelstein recommended a form of physical therapy to me that took it away. But I remember it was quite painful. In fact, it was so painful, I was sleeping an hour and a half to 2 hours a night for about a month and a half. I didn't know it was possible to get by in such little sleep. I was really suffering physically, and it was really tough. But fortunately, I found something that took the problem away. So I was going to mention that one of the things about acceptance, RBT advocates acceptance, that you want to accept something to the extent that you are acknowledging that this thing that I don't want can exist. There's no reason that it should not exist. And if I accept, yes, this can exist, I am better prepared to try to do something about it. If I'm fuming about this should not exist, life should be easier, I'm taking attention away from what I can do to possibly solve the problem. And I think the history of the human race is one of, and includes solving problems, but with that came the first step of acknowledging we've got a problem here and there's no reason we shouldn't have a problem, and this is a situation we don't like. Now, let's just accept that, and what it can we do about it, if anything?
Yeah.
Wait, I have to correct you, Mick. I think you said something that your sciatica was awful. Um, uh, Michael and I sometimes joke about things like that, and we call each other awful persons. Oh, I don't like to brag, but one time me and Michael got Albert Ellis to say he was an awful person, and
Well,
it was just a joke, of course. Uh, uh, but to me, the word awful is AWE. It's awe. It's sort of. I'm an atheist, and awe means that there's sort of some god or something like that, and I'm not into that. Awe means that it's impossible to occur. It's like a miracle. Well, I'm an empiricist. There are no miracles. There's no awe. And sometimes Michael and I use awe as a joke against each other, being silly. But I think you're quite right, and it's probably Egoscue. That's what Michael recommended to me, and I think that that's very helpful. So to reiterate a point I was making before, REBT doesn't say you have to accept things and not do anything about them. You have to accept them in the sense that you don't let them, you don't add to your misery by thinking incorrectly about them. But you don't have to accept them and suffer. I mean, if you had sciatica and you can only sleep an hour a night, and you refuse to do anything about it, that would not exactly be REBT. REBT just means you don't add more misery to the misery that you've got your back problems.
Yeah, Mick.
well, I was going to say I was using, this is the thing, I could have used a more specific word like excruciating or debilitating or intensely, acutely painful. I was using awful in the sense of consuming all of my physical enjoyment and making my life incredibly difficult to live and incessantly, non-ceasingly painful. So that it was awful in that sense. There are different definitions of awful, but there is a more specific way to describe it. So I was in incessant acute pain is what was happening.
No, I think you're quite right. And the same with the word should. You don't want to be maniacal about this. There is a proper use of the word should, like the bus should be coming around in 5 minutes if it adheres to its schedule.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of a should is an innocuous should. It's not a should that's going to make you mashugana. It's not going to make you crazy. And the way you're using the word awful as excruciating is very similar to that. So we don't want to be rabid about words. I think the key is the spirit of it. And the sense in which you were using awful was excruciating, and the sense that I'm now using should about a bus schedule is innocuous.
Yeah, Mick.
I once asked Michael Edelstein about this, that yeah, you can use the word should if it's contingent. I should be there on time. That's just assuming things go well. The completion of the sentence was that with if things go well, I'll be there on time. But I asked Michael why if he mentions this to people he's teaching REBT to, and he says no, because it gets too confusing. So he just teaches people about shoulds in terms of absolutistic statements, and then they eventually on their own put it together. Well, you can have a contingent should. Words do have different definitions, you know.
Yeah, contingent should or conditional should, and if then should. If I want to get to the airport before the plane leaves, I should leave my house by 1 o'clock. So that would be a contingent or conditional should.
Yeah, yeah, because the way we do ourselves in is what we're thinking. Hell, you could use the word demand, and if you're not thinking of demand in absolutistic terms, but that would be kind of a goofy use of it. I demand you come along. Although somebody could say that playfully, hey, I'm going to the baseball game. I demand you come along. And the person they're telling it to can understand, oh, you're just being playful. Yeah.
Walter,
Another example would be supply and demand curves. I'm an economist, and we use supply and demand curves, and no one is saying you can't use demand as in demand curves. That would be just silly.
Yeah.
yeah,
One of the things that I find really helps with REBT is Albert Ellis's statement that if you are requiring yourself to be 100% rational, that is unfair. And the craziest thought you can have is, I must be rational, because it's self-negating. And so Albert Ellis takes into the NRBT takes into account the human factor, which is that people are fallible, and to aim to be, and Albert Ellis's widow, Debbie Joffe Ellis, told me, well, you can aim to be perfectly rational. If you don't demand it, it could benefit you well. And I have found that I've upped my game considerably by aiming to be perfectly rational. And then I go a lot farther than just saying to myself, well, I'm not going to be 100% rational, so I'm not going to worry about it. I put my attention on being rational more often. So if I'm driving my car and somebody cuts me off and I want to honk and say, you son of a whatever, I can say to myself, well, people are fallible. Best for me to just take care of myself and to remember that people are fallible, and to look out for the next guy, knowing that people are fallible. I haven't heard Albert Ellis say this, but I use it myself. One of the best ways to avoid an accident is to be aware that you can have one, and that includes anything such as having irrational thoughts. I can have irrational thoughts. Let me be ready for them and correct them when they happen.
yeah, Walter. Although it seems like you're naturally rational, it's my understanding that at one time you would make yourself anxious unnecessarily. And is that true? And then how did that change?
Well, the reason I went to Albert Ellis in the first place is because I give public speeches. And when I went to him very early in my career, I would think thoughts that were not to my advantage. I would think, my God, if I don't give a perfect speech, the heavens will fall, and this would be awful. And I can't tolerate being imperfect speaker. I'm trying to promote what I'm trying to promote, and if I don't do a good job, I'm a disgrace. I'm an awful person. And what Albert Ellis taught me, and I'm very grateful to him for this, is that why pile on misery on yourself. We're all imperfect. No speaker ever gave a perfect speech. I certainly never gave a perfect speech, and I don't think anyone, even Al, ever gave a perfect speech. And why make things worse? And now I remember the denouement of this. He once asked me, "What's the worst thing that can happen if you give a speech?" And I concocted the following. I get up in front of the audience, and there are 500 people, and they're cheering wildly, and they're saying, "Yay, yay, I'm wonderful." And one by one, they each leave. And after about 5, 10 minutes, there's nobody in the room. And I thought that would be about the worst thing that could possibly happen. And if I could honestly then say to myself, well, I got to work on that speech, or something like that, then the whole thing would go away. And it never went away perfectly. I always get 1% stomach cramps or dry throat or something like that when I'm contemplating giving a speech. But sometimes I get nothing. It's like right now when I was contemplating doing this interview, did I give myself a pain in the neck about that I might not do a good interview? No, Michael and I are friends for years, and we speak every week, and this would be something like that. Well, a lot of times when I now get up on the podium and I start to speak, it's as if I'm speaking to one person or two people or three, as in this case, and I don't give myself any hassle about it at all. Every once in a while, I get a little tweak in my gut that, I might not give a perfect speech, but very, very rarely. So I'm very grateful to Al for this, and I apply it to everything else that I can think of.
Great. Well, we just have a couple of minutes. Anything else either of you would like to add before we conclude?
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thing. There are probably 10,000, there are 8 billion people in the world. There are probably 10,000 people that have roughly or exactly my physical abilities. Maybe different ones, maybe they have a different disease, but the diseases are about the same. And I'm determined to be the best person out of that 10,000 and not giving yourself a pain in the ass about it. And I sort of feel that I'm in a contest with the other 9,999 people, that I'm going to do better than them in terms of not making my situation worse by saying it's awful and I can't stand it, and I must be fully healthy, and I must have the body that I had when I was 22 years old. And I sort of think of it as a little bit of a contest. And I think I'm doing pretty well. I might not be the best. There might be somebody out there better than me, but I'm going to try to do as best I can to not make my condition worse by thinking, masturbating about my situation.
Okay, very good, very good. Okay, thanks very much, Walter, for joining us and being a guest. And if someone wants to get in touch with you, do you have a website?
Yeah, I do. Just Google Walter Block. I'm all over the place because I give a lot of speeches and I do a lot of writing. WalterBlock.com or wblock at loyno.edu, Loyno. That would be a way to get in touch with me. And thanks, Michael, for having me on your show, and Nick and Chris.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thanks, Chris Rossini, our technical engineer. Comment below if you have thoughts about the interview, or if you have questions, give us a thumbs up if you liked it. Suggest subjects for future podcasts. If you'd like to be a guest, we'd love to have you as a guest. Walter survived, you probably will too. And suggest subjects that you'd like us to discuss. And subscribe to the 3 Minute Therapy podcast to do what, Mick?
To stay on the rational side of life and physical pain.